Hello there, and welcome to the first installment of Delorean Diaries. Now this is going to be a series that documents the process of me building a fully fledged Delorean, interior and exterior. I've been in visual effects for about 5 years now, around about, maybe a little bit less, on and off. I'm predominantly a layout artist, and I've wanted to transition into modelling for some time. I wanted to start documenting the process in the hopes that you guys could maybe see my journey. We can all grow together, we can learn things from one another, we can even share things with one another. So, without further ado, go. If it's worked. Boop. Yes, it's worked. Okay, first time I'm doing this. For anyone that's curious on how I'm doing this in particular, in case you want to do it, essentially it's a live project within DaVinci Resolve, and I've just pressed P for big picture mode. So the general process here, what I'm using is essentially 3D cut and sew tool. There we go, we can see that now. 3D cut and sew tool is really cool. It means that you can actually use your viewport yourself to create your edges. Super duper handy. If you guys would like further information on that, then let me know and I'll see what I can do. Before then I used to do everything manually through the UV editor by shortcuts and whatnot, which I'd say for basic shapes it's probably faster to go with that method. However, I think when you're dealing with more complex shapes, it might be a better advantage for you to use the 3D cut sew tool. But that's why I basically have both the viewport for the interactive view with your perspective camera plus the UV editor as you'd expect. So while I'm going through all of this, I'm essentially just very quickly cutting everything out, laying out the UVs as per normal, but the layout itself is, they're just kind of there to stay group and clustered, just kind of nestled, unwrapped, and they're placed somewhere on the UV tiles. Not really worrying about layout at this particular moment in time. I will be going with a UV workflow. So right now everything's just set at a single textile density. Let's continue a little bit further. So the shells at the moment, I'm not too concerned about border edges right now. At this moment in time, I believe I could be wrong. Feel free to let me know if this is incorrect. I don't think Mari has such a huge issue with border edges in particular. So everything at the moment is just laid out so everything's super flat and super clean. This bit was quite funny actually. Pause at the right point. So this is the funny thing when it comes to UV texturing, is sometimes you can model something and think, yep, absolutely fine. This was created through booleans by getting this top mesh into the bottom mesh, and you can actually see where the mesh has still been preserved. If one of these frames shows it, yeah, you can totally see where some n-gons have been preserved as well. That's the one thing that I never really thought UV would serve a purpose for, is to just act as another way to QC your mesh. So I thought that was quite fun. But yeah, I totally had no idea when I did that bit that that piece of mesh was still there, so we had a little bit of cleanup to make and just deleted that area entirely and kind of think I reprojected it, I'm not too sure. So again, same deal here. A lot of this just kind of very basically cutting everything up and laying it out. And at least per UV tile at this stage, just making sure all the kind of relevant and nearby pieces of geometry that makes sense stay there. Oh, this bit's cool. Okay, so this is where we get onto a different day, and I read an article that made the layout stage just a little bit easier, because before then, whenever I was like lining up all my pieces, well, there's a bit where, yeah, this is an example. So I'm kind of just manually doing this by eye, which is okay to some extent, but it can kind of become a wee bit tedious, or if you're like me, you get a little bit involved in kind of making sure everything's meticulous. However, one of these shelves, here we go. If we go down to, I think it's align and snap. I'll need to do that again. There we go. Yeah, that's what we want. Go down to here. These are amazing. If you haven't used them yet, highly recommend. To get this up, I think it's in tools, and if you haven't got it up, it will say show. If you have got it up and it currently says hide, then your UV toolkit is docked somewhere else, so you can always just untick it and retick it. It might appear there, or it might appear as an actual like window somewhere else, so it's worth checking where that might be living. But this is amazing, highly recommend if you're not using it already. And pixel distance is the one that you want to mess around with as well. The pixel distance will basically determine how far each shell is from each other. So actually no, sorry, like that. The distribute one I believe is, yeah, shell patterns. So I guess this explains how many pixels you think it is, or at least how many units are between each shell when you do use one of these commands. So I would highly recommend align and snap and arrange and layout, distribute. There's, like, if you're like me and you didn't look at the UV toolkit ever, essentially, I would highly recommend just going through and checking out some of these tools, because back when I started learning Maya, like, it was, I think 2012, 2013, I think UVs were pretty janky back then. However, it seems like they've come on loads, which is pretty cool. So it was around this point as well where I actually started using some of these, this shader where it has this map on it, which I didn't realise until I just started recording. In fact, I won't say it. If you notice anything interesting about this pattern, let me know. I ironically have been staring at it for hours, and it's literally just before I started talking for this video I've then noticed it. Let me know if you know what I'm on about. So these pieces were an absolute stinker to unwrap. A little pro tip for you actually when you're doing stuff like this. If you know that the back is never going to be shown at all in your mesh, then to make it a bit quicker for you to unwrap, I highly recommend just deleting any faces that you don't really need, because then when it comes to cutting your edges, you just got that little bit less to sew. Might seem like it's not that important, but if you have, say, 60 pieces of mesh in your scene and you need to unwrap them all, but you've deleted those extra faces, that could be the difference between you finishing a shot on that day versus it having to like run over, or you having to head back, or like through lunch sort of thing. But yeah, these pieces are really weird actually, depending on how the crease was. Like this, I was absolutely determined by having and holding the edge here, I'd just be able to cut it, no problem, but it absolutely hated it. I ended up having to go all around this, the worst of it to cut, and then it started to sit right. If I show here, yeah, you can see a little bit more where I've had to like cut it right here, but it's all down to experimentation, to be fair. Sometimes they unwrap how you think, and other times they don't, but that's just the way how it goes. It's always worth experimenting, for sure. And at worst, you can always reproject. That's the point actually. So the way how I am projecting in particular is, which is the second reason I use the viewport, I'm remembering now. So this viewport is actively driving all my camera-based projections. So every time I use this command here, except what I'm probably doing is using the radial menu instead of actually ever clicking here, because these frames are kind of not picking it up. Actually, if I push back enough, can we see? We don't see the command, however, this angle here to this angle here, pretty much about the same. So I personally find camera based projection quite useful. And then using that in combination with the 3D cut and sew tool. Yeah, 3D cut and sew. So here you can see where I've grouped all of the components together, and these are the ones that are kind of near the, I think they're like the radiator at the front of the car. I'm not entirely sure terminology. But here is a perfect example of where I've kind of just got all my pieces somewhat together and they're just shunted in random places to then focus on laying out a little bit later. So that's around about the end of this episode. If there's any tips that you enjoyed, feel free to hit the like button for this video. That'd be really cool and a big help. If there's anything you happen to notice in this video that you'd like a little bit more explanation on, then feel free to let me know with a comment down below. If you have a method of your own that you find is really beneficial to UV mapping, feel free to leave a comment down below as well. After all, we're all learning together. The more things we learn, the better. If by any chance you happen to be looking for like-minded artists to help level up your skills, then feel free to check out the 3D modelling community. It's a group that I run in Facebook. It's a great place to share tips and tricks, show your work off, get some feedback. I tend to pop in from time to time as well and give my own thoughts to help one another, and it's generally a nice little place to be. I'll provide a link down below along with social media links if you want to follow and keep up to date with what's going on, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye guys.